So, we've all been given the project of predicting what the world will look like in 2050. It's basically pretty easy to say that any professional would say that it's going to drastically change, and we believe that change is only one of the few things that we can predict. So for our project today, we have 6 key areas that we'd like to focus on that we think are changing the most over these next 50 years, and those are going to be education, health and medicine, technology, energy, military, and economics. So I'm going to just begin with education, and it's pretty easy to say, like, with progression of time, like as it's gone so far, you can predict that in 2050 the modern day class is going to be obsolete. As we go from the industrial to the digital era, it's kind of simple to see that what is the standard classroom today of like sitting around like this is going to be basically deemed as a distant memory. This is due to the fact of technological advances connecting the world, growth of online courses, and also reconstructing classrooms. First, technological advances. So basically, in this digital era, as we're going into it, it just seems to keep progressively getting faster and faster, moving quicker and quicker. And Naomi Davidson with Khan Academy is quoted talking about technology connecting the world in colleges, and she said that students will be able to collaborate on a global scale on real applications of ideas. And goes on to talk about how it's not going to be something that's out of the ordinary for somebody to say in India to be grouped up with somebody in America for a group project in a class. Along something tied into technology would be the future of online schooling. In the Harvard Gazette, they interviewed the Arizona State president about he wanted to utilize a project he called Broaden Access, and so he basically offered more classes online so that he could touch a wider range of people so that they didn't necessarily have to be at the Arizona State campus. And after utilizing this, he was quoted saying that the freshman size class grew by 42%, and that nearly now 40% of all of the undergraduates at Arizona State take at least one online course. And that kind of helps keep their costs down, but keep them advancing as a university. And finally, reconstructing the classrooms. So Michael Gibson with the Foundation, he seemed optimistic towards the future of our classrooms when he says that not necessarily will they resemble a modern day classroom where it's one size fits all, but rather you're going to have smaller size classes with not necessarily a teacher in a sense, more like a coach. So you're going to be straight into the workforce, basically getting experience of what you need to know, and also being able to like motivate you and keep you going while you're doing most of the learning process yourself and not necessarily having to take lectures, go to lectures and take notes and all of that. And with that being said, we will go to medicine.
So the world already has so many advances in medicine today that we can see that in 2050, these advances will just allow society to live longer and healthier. So to go with genetics, first off. Give us a second. Okay. So it's obviously a scientific fact that we age, and as we age, we eventually die. On average, humans live to be around 77, and society has been working in medicine and everything, and they have found that it is because our DNA gets damaged, and because of that, that is why we age. And so with that, they'll be able to minimize the damage done to us, and therefore allow us to live longer in that sense. And also, they will be able to soon genetically enhance the embryos to not be as susceptible to different diseases such as autism, diabetes, chickenpox, and the list just goes on and on. That would allow parents to change the physical appearance of their child as well, while that may not be ethically acceptable at the time. With that, then comes stem cell research, and so they're normally derived from embryos, most of the time either conceived in a lab or from abortions and whatnot. And however, though, there's many different ways now to actually get them. They get them from in vitro fertilization and the umbilical cord after a child's born. And science has really been working on cloning and budding these stem cells so that they can then just duplicate them. There's many different benefits, such as creating new tissues, treating diseases such as type 1 diabetes, Parkinson's, and Alzheimer's, and also repairing different damage to your body. And science has even gone as far as saying that they could have new treatments for cancer patients. And as you can see in the graph, 81% of people who have used stem cell has seen their condition improve. And that's also a rat with a human ear on it, grown from stem cells. So next, we get to talk about technology.
So technology in 2050, who knows what it's going to be like? Are we going to be flying in cars? We're going to have robots that control everything. But in the past 50 years, a lot of things have changed recently. We've got a lot of new technologies coming up right now, but to imagine what's going to go on in 50 more years, what we're going to talk about. So futuristic vehicles, are we going to be driving still on the road? Are we going to be flying? How are the cars going to be powered? What I believe is cars are going to be powered either by solar or by electricity. Fossil fuels are not going to be an option anymore. We're not going to be polluting the ozone layer with our vehicles. And companies are working on concept cars allowing them to cruise along the highways without drivers. So there's the use of hands-free autopilot, we would say. And in many metro areas, well-organized public transportation systems will be a more effective way to move larger numbers of people. And so now we talk about artificial intelligence. Are there going to be robots controlling our society? Maybe they're taxi drivers. Maybe they're workers. So while robots can replace some workers, it's important to remember that past innovations have unlocked new industries and new jobs along with them. So now we talk about energy.
All right, so all these different things we've talked about, from education to health to technology, they all revolve around one thing, and that's our world's ability to harness energy and put into a useful source. So currently the world population is 7 billion people, and in 2050, the estimated world population is supposed to be 9.5 billion people. That's a 35% growth, and that's massive. So with this growing population, we need to figure out how are we going to supply energy. The demand is going to be extraordinary, and so how are we going to afford this? That's the main question. And with the population increase, there's going to be a lot more people that have access to energy in the future. And so yeah, how do we pay for this? The answer is alternative energy. Right now, the world runs off of fossil fuels. We have oil, coal, and natural gas. Oil is the most used one, as seen by the graph, followed by coal, and then natural gas. These are finite resources. These won't last us forever. So the question is, how can we find a way to keep the world running? If we keep using these finite fuels, then we're going to run out eventually. The price is going to skyrocket as the resources become scarce. All right. And so, yeah, many experts in the field of energy see switching to alternative energy as the most viable option. We can't just keep looking for oil and coal and polluting our environment. So alternative energy is a lot cleaner. By alternative energy, I mean nuclear, wind power, solar power, and geothermal. And so experts say that switching to alternative energy would cost -0.4% to 1.5% of the global GDP between the years 2009 and 2050. And that means that we could actually be saving money by switching to these new alternative sources of energy. There's one thing that kind of is in the way. A lot of people are afraid of nuclear energy because you see what happened in Japan with the earthquake and the tsunami, Chernobyl, and there's a lot of doubt about nuclear energy, but countries in Europe are really utilizing it and having a lot of success. And I believe that is what the future will see, is a lot of nuclear energy.
today I'm going to talk to you guys about the advancing military in the year 2050. So what will happen is the militaries, they'll all increase, and Chinese military, they're increasing by double digits every year. And that's just extraordinary, and soon they're going to surpass us, which we see ourselves as like the most mighty nation in the whole world, and we're going to get surpassed by China, and that's not good. And so also their navy is increasing, and by the year 2020, their navy is supposed to outgrow us, and so they're going to have more navy boats than we will. And so thus, if they have more, then they can kill us easier. And also with their military, they can kill us even more. Also with, as Travis and Hunter has said, technology is on the rise, and since technology is on the rise, it's going to be cheaper. Like if we look, for example, at a calculator now, it's like a really cheap calculator is probably like, what, 15 bucks? Well, back when they first invented those, they were like 50 or 60 bucks, and they're really expensive. So since technology is going to get better and more efficient, it is going to get cheaper. And lastly, China, we see China as one country, but in a sense it's two. It's a one country, two system split. So what that means is Hong Kong is actually different economically than China is. China is communist while Hong Kong is democratic. And so that contract is supposed to expire on 2047. And that is going to be a massive problem because, as you can tell, Hong Kong is very rich, and actually, surprisingly, they supply a lot of the money to China. And so they are basically sustaining China. And when that contract expires, Hong Kong's going to want to renew it, but China probably won't let them because they don't like it. And then I can foresee a civil war, possibly even a world war, if we want to defend Hong Kong, and then other countries will jump in. And then that is mine, and Lucas will talk to you about economics.
All right, so to wrap it up, so the world in 2050 is pertaining to economics. Unfortunately, when economists, when they go to talk about the world in 50 to 60 years, they focus on one main thing, and that's who's going to surpass the United States economically. And it's the greatest area of focus, and as many of you probably know, most say China. They think China is going to surpass the United States. And so it's interesting because the main reason that China does so well, as you know, is we produce all of our goods in China. Everything is manufactured over in China. They are able to produce it for literally slim to nothing, and then they can export it for an incredible profit. And so, as you can see, in 2004, their exports were, I think 35% of the GDP just came from exports alone, and that number's just been doing nothing but rising. It's actually around 47 to 50% now. So they're like a good chunk, or half of their economy, is based off of their exports and what they're able to sell to us, or what they're able to send to us at a decent price for them. And the reason they're able to do this is mainly because they can employ people for little to nothing. It's really sad, but the population of China is obviously the greatest in the world, over 1 billion people. And I think right now, 50 to 60% of the people in China are still living in fair to poor living conditions, which is terrible. So they'll do anything that they can to make a little bit of money, and so factories can employ them for literally dirt cheap. And when they do, if somebody has a problem in the factory and they don't want to work there, the factory owners, they don't have to sweat about it at all. They can just take them out and they'll hire the next person for literally nothing. So it's, as far as China surpassing the United States, though, OECD.org says that they'll do it as early as 2016, but in our view, if you look at the data, they've just been doing nothing but climbing for years now. And I think one of the greatest points was made when we watched the debate on will they surpass the United States, and one of the guys said, China can't just keep growing and growing and going down a straight path. It eventually has to turn, and eventually something has to happen. And so I believe that, if China could keep doing what they're doing for 50 years, possibly happen. It never has happened, and it really never can. So with that, that's our presentation.